I record this now under inquisitorial order. I am of sound mind, though I know how that claim sounds. The quill scribes watch from behind their lenses, waiting for contradiction or fracture. I will speak plainly. I will not raise my voice, but understand. The stone was breathing when we arrived. We were deployed to Varnis III under the pretext of architectural reclamation and relic verification, a task that would normally fall to ecclesiarchy surveyors, not guardsmen. That should have been the first warning. You don't send lasguns to dust off saints unless someone already expects trouble. The Basilica of St. Carolus stood at the edge of the lower hive, half buried in ashfall, its spires cracked from years of neglect. Yet there was hymn smoke still lingering in the air, as if a mass had ended minutes before. And the walls. Emperor, preserve me. They glistened, not with rain, but with condensation, like a fevered body. Trooper Helran put his hand on the marble, drew it back, stared. Sergeant, it's warm. I checked myself. He was right. The stone pulsed faintly beneath the gauntlet, slow, steady, like the heartbeat of something enormous. We took formation and advanced. Helm lamps lit fractured mosaics along the nave, holy frescoes of St. Carolus performing miracles. But the eyes in the murals looked wet, reflective, watching. There was no sound, except the echo of our boots, and something else. A hush. A breath drawn inwards and held. We moved toward the pews. That is where we found them. Hundreds of pilgrims seated upright in perfect rows, heads bowed, hands folded, expressions serene. Their clothes ancient, threadbare, brittle. Their skin dry and pale, but not decayed. No rot, no mold, no dust. They looked as though they had simply fallen asleep decades ago and never woke. Medicaid Talisar moved to examine the nearest. He pressed fingers to the neck. Nothing, no pulse, dead. But he leaned closer. There's moisture under the eyelids, like they were alive recently. We checked another, then another. Every corpse bore the same mark behind the right ear, a raised rosary pattern scar, naturally formed, not carved, a symbol of devotion or infection. Hard to tell the difference in my line of work. We should have left right then. Requested atmospheric cleansing, flame units, orbital sterilization. But we kept searching, because the Emperor had sent us, and the Emperor does not send men into empty sanctuaries. Corporal Dresk reached to adjust the posture of one pilgrim slumped slightly to the side, and that is when it happened. The pilgrim exhaled, not a gasp, not a moan, just a slow, soft breath, as though letting go of a long-held prayer. Talisar stumbled backward, swearing. The corpse's eyes opened, clouded, unfocused, moving, and then the mouth moved too. The voice was barely air, but we heard it. The flesh remembers the shape of devotion. The corpse that spoke did not move again. Its mouth remained slightly parted, as if caught in the last syllable of prayer. The others around it remained still, hands folded in holy repose. Yet the air had changed. The silence inside the basilica now listened back. We formed a perimeter, and Talisar attempted further examination. He pried open the mouth of the speaking pilgrim, gently, reverently. No signs of vocal cord activity, no moisture, no elasticity of living tissue. The lungs were collapsed, sunken, long since emptied. There should have been no air inside that body at all. But I swear I heard it breathe again. I ordered Vox contact with command. A burst of static answered, harsh and rolling like a storm at sea. Though there was no storm in the hive city, no wind, no weather at all under thousands of tons of metal and smog. Helran cycled frequency. Same result. The basilica was blocking transmission, or something beneath it was. Corruption field? He asked. I wanted to say yes. Warp interference at least can be named, catalogued, fought. But this felt biological. The pilgrims themselves were a contradiction. Talisar's Medicaid tools scraped skin samples, The flesh was preserved, not mummified, collagen intact, cells dormant but unbroken. No mold, no bacteria, no smell of death, only incense. Sweet, like temple services in childhood. The same scent clung to the walls. Corporal Dresk walked the aisle, inspecting each body. He noticed something we missed. At the edge of the pew rests, faint depressions, not scratches, not wear, finger impressions, pressed into stone, as if the pilgrims had gripped tightly when they died, as if they were holding on to something, or bracing against it. We followed the pew line toward the altar. The hymnal lectern was cracked, its edges rounded like softened bone. Frescoes behind it depicted St. Carolus performing the Great Preservation, the recording of his final blessing. But the fresco was wrong. I had seen sanctioned depictions of the same event in chapels across Cadian regiments, Carolus raising his hands in benediction. Here his hands were inside a man's chest, not offering blessing but grasping the heart with tenderness. The painter had not stylized the miracle. He had recorded it. Before any of us could speak, Helran called out. He had found something beneath the altar steps, a small devotional journal, leather scraped nearly bald from age. Yet the ink on the final pages was fresh. The date was written 3 times, as if to confirm itself. 2 weeks ago. But the pilgrims had been here for centuries. I turned the page slowly, as if the paper might scream. The final entry read, "He tells us we will not fade, we will not rot, we will not return to dust, we will be with him, we will become his house." Talisar whispered, "This wasn't a mass, it was emerging." The basilica groaned, and the walls drew a single, slow breath. The groan of the basilica did not come from shifting stone. It sounded wet, like muscle stretching, like a throat clearing itself before speech. We sealed helmets and activated rebreathers, though no one said why. Some instinct whispered that the air itself was no longer ours to breathe freely. Lamps cut through haze thickening near the altar. Not incense smoke now, but something heavier, clinging, almost oily. Talisar traced a gloved hand along the floor beside the pews. He froze. "Sergeant, the stone. Look." It wasn't stone. Not entirely. Under the marble veneer, something fibrous showed. Pale, interlaced strands, like layers of compacted tendon. The basilica had grown around something, not been built upon it. We moved to the rear of the altar dais. The devotional journal had mentioned descending. There had to be a way down. Dresk found a seam along the floor, a hatch disguised with saintly iconography, not mechanical, organic. The edges were soft. It yielded to pressure like thick hide when we forced it open. A narrow staircase spiraled downward, lit not by torches or lumen strips, but by a faint bioluminescent glow radiating from the walls, the color of bruised flesh. Helran muttered under his breath, "This isn't holy ground. This is an organ." We descended. The chanting began as a vibration first, felt in the bones, then heard. A resonance of hundreds of voices, layered, rising and falling like tides. Not chaotic, ordered, harmonized, devotional. They were still praying. We reached the lower crypt. What we saw was not death, not life, but a preservation between both, held in rapture. Dozens, no, hundreds of bodies were fused together into the walls, ceiling, and floor. Not crushed, not mangled, joined. Muscles braided into support structures. Ribs opened into arches. Tendons stretched like cords, holding the entire chamber in shape. Faces remained intact, eyes half-lidded, mouths open in breathless hymns. They were singing the same phrase the corpse had spoken above. The flesh remembers the shape of devotion. I don't know how long we stood there. The chaplain was the first to move. He stepped forward, helmet retracted, eyes wide, not in horror, but something like awe. His voice trembled, yet not with fear. "This is not corruption," he whispered. "This is miracle, eternal unity, an end to decay, an end to waste, an end to death." His hand reached toward a section of wall, a living tapestry of interwoven limbs and serene faces. "Do not touch it," I ordered. His fingers brushed the flesh. The crypt shivered. Every face in the chamber inhaled at once, a soft collective breath. Warm air rushed across us. The singing stopped. Silence pressed against us like a weight. Then the flesh sang back, but this time it used our voices. "Welcome." The chaplain turned to me slowly. There were tears on his cheeks, and something was moving beneath his skin. The chaplain did not scream. That was the worst part of it. Whatever moved beneath his skin did so slowly, reverently, like fingers running along the inside of his bones. His breath came soft and calm, as if he had just received a blessing. The others stepped back, weapons raised, but he did not seem to see us anymore. His eyes were fixed on the living walls. "The Emperor works in ways beyond our knowing," he whispered. "Perhaps this is his mercy. Perhaps he has granted them eternity." "Chaplain," I said, voice steady but not calm. "Step away. Now." He did not. The fused choir shifted. Bodies half sunk in the walls straightened. Their heads lifted in perfect unison, eyes opening as if waking into prayer. Yet their gazes did not settle on us. They looked past us, through us, as if seeing something far beyond. The hymn resumed, but not the gentle murmur from before. This one carried depth, a layered resonance that shook dust from the crypt ceiling. It felt like standing beneath cathedral bells, yet the sound came from throats that should not still hold breath. Talisar stumbled, clasping his helmet, teeth grinding. "Sergeant, the resonance, it's vibrating through the nervous system. My spine," I ordered, dampeners engaged. Vox static filled our helmets as sound pressure equalized, but the sensation of being heard did not fade. The choir was not singing to us. It was singing about us, for us, of us. Helran's auspex crackled, readings shifting erratically, unable to determine whether the biomass was increasing or merely reconfiguring itself. Heat signatures rolled and pulsed through the walls like heartbeats. The basilica was not containing the flesh, it was grown from it. "Sergeant," Dresk said, voice quiet. "Look." The lower crypt extended deeper, a tunnel branching downward, lined with pulsing tissue. And at the far end, a faint, rhythmic glow. Something alive was beating down there. The chaplain's smile widened. "We stand in the body of the saint." "No," I said. "We stand inside something that feeds." He turned to me slowly, pitying. "You still fear death. That is your failing." Before I could reply, the choir changed pitch. A single long note, smooth, rising, almost gentle. The living walls shifted, not violently, not with sudden motion. They simply rearranged. Faces moved closer together. Limbs tightened into new support struts. A corridor formed ahead of us, not carved but invited, like an opening throat. And from within it came a voice, Chaplain Varin's voice. But Varin was standing right beside us. The voice from the corridor said, warm and welcoming, "Come. The heart has been waiting." The chaplain took one step toward the passage, then another. We did not restrain him. We were too busy realizing something far worse. The basilica was leading us. It wanted us deeper, and it never wanted us to leave. We followed the chaplain because there was nowhere else to go. The corridor ahead was narrow, walls shifting subtly with each step we took, not closing, not threatening, guiding, leading with the gentle insistence of breath against the back of the neck. Lights flickered from the bioluminescent veins in the walls, pulsing in time with our footsteps, as though synchronizing with us. The choir's hymn drifted behind us, distant now, but no quieter. The sound vibrated through the marrow, like a memory trying to become physical. The chaplain walked ahead, his gait calm, assured, as though he had already accepted some truth we hadn't yet seen. Talisar leaned close to me. His voice was strained. "It isn't worship. It isn't devotion. It's appetite." We entered a chamber large enough to hold a regiment muster. It might once have been catacomb space. Now it was a cathedral made entirely of flesh. Ribs formed vaulted ceilings. Tendons stretched into banners. Skin draped where tapestries should hang. Faint devotional writing forming along its surface, like text developing in old photographs. The writing changed as we looked at it. Words forming, dissolving, reforming anew. Prayers written not for comprehension, but for repetition. Dresk whispered, "It teaches them how to pray, even after death." He was not wrong. A low sound rose from the center of the chamber, wet, rhythmic, hungry. At its heart was a mound of merged bodies, dozens, maybe hundreds, not writhing, not screaming, just breathing, all sharing one slow, steady inhale and exhale. One set of lungs stretching across many chests, one rhythm, one hunger. The chaplain stepped forward. "We call death an ending," he said softly. "But what if the Emperor made a place where ending was unnecessary?" His voice had changed. Softer, warmer, too gentle for a battlefield priest. Then the mound shifted, not to attack, but to make space. A fold of flesh opened in an almost welcoming gesture, and a guardsman, Trooper Sile, dropped his lasgun. I hear them," he whispered. "They're not afraid. They're peaceful. They don't suffer. They don't lose anything." He took a step forward. I grabbed his arm. "Hold your position, guardsman." He turned to me. His eyes were full of relief. Not madness, not zealotry. Relief. "I don't want to die in mud and smoke," he said. "I don't want to be forgotten. I don't want to fade." The mound opened further, inviting him. Talisar reached for him, too slow. Sile stepped into the mass. It closed around him like warm water. No scream, no struggle, just a sigh. The mound pulsed once, like a satisfied heart. The chaplain bowed his head. "Nothing is wasted here. Nothing is lost. No soldier forgotten. No devotion unanswered." The walls around us breathed in agreement. I realized then, this wasn't a sanctuary, or a curse, or a prison. It was a meal, and we had just fed it. Trooper Sile's absorption did not end with his body disappearing into the mass. The change was immediate. The mound's breathing shifted, its rhythm altering to match his. His chest, or what remained of it, rose and fell at the front of the fused bodies, as though the entire amalgam inhaled through him now. His face rested peacefully among the others, eyes closed, lips parted in prayer. No blood, no tearing, no violence. It was consumption without cruelty. That made it worse. The chaplain stepped closer, voice reverent, breaking all tactical protocol. "There is no death here, no decay, only unity. The Emperor has answered the prayers of the forgotten." His helmet was off. His guard lowered. His posture one of worship, not discipline. I moved to restrain him. He didn't resist. He simply smiled. Then the choir changed again. Not the deep, endless hymn of before, but something soft, intimate, like voices whispering directly into each of our ears. And every voice in the choir was one we had lost. Fallen comrades, family, names we had buried years ago. My brother's voice, clear as the last day I heard him speak. "Lauren, come home." My vision blurred. My hands shook. The lasgun felt suddenly too heavy, too small, too pointless. Dresk shouted something. I couldn't hear. The whisper was too close, too warm, too familiar. Talisar slapped the side of my helmet, static ripping through the Vox link and severing the illusion. The chamber's illusions faded with the interruption, the whispers thinning to echoes, then silence. The chaplain was no longer smiling. He was kneeling, hands out, submitting. The mound reached for him, not violently, like a welcome. He made no attempt to rise, no attempt to fight, no plea for rescue. We could have grabbed him. We could have pulled him away. We did nothing, because part of us, the small, weary part buried under years of war, understood. To never fear death again. to never watch comrades fall, to never wake to the sound of bombardment, to never be alone. The mass enfolded him gently. His voice joined the choir instantly, not screaming, singing, a pure, resonant tone. The hymn deepened, now stronger, fuller, echoing along the cathedral walls above. The basilica's entire structure responded, expanding, shifting, reshaping. The architecture itself was alive, reacting to its new celebrant. The chaplain's voice rose above the others, harmonizing into a clear phrase. "Bring the offerings below." Dresk cursed under his breath. Talisar whispered, horrified. That wasn't his voice. Helran looked at me. "Sergeant, what do we do now?" I did not answer, because the basilica answered for me. The doors above slammed shut. Not metal, flesh. We were sealed inside a body that wanted us alive, not to kill us, to keep us, forever. When the basilica sealed behind us, it did so without impact or force. No slamming metal, no grinding stone, just the soft final closing of flesh. A heartbeat shuddered through the walls, travelling along the ribs of the chamber like a low, distant thunder. The air thickened, moist, warm, carrying the faint scent of oil and incense. The choir above us sang in rising waves, their voices flowing through the living architecture like air through a lung. We were no longer inside a structure. We were inside something that breathed. Talisar adjusted respirator seals, voice shaking through Voxlink static. "We need to find an exit path. Anything. A crack, a ventilation duct, a structural joint. Something not alive." "Scan readings," I ordered. Helran lifted the auspex. The display flickered in distortion, then realigned. "It's mapping the internal mass," he said slowly. "Not stone, not ferrocrete, organic substrate, thick, connected. Internal supports are skeletal. The whole basilica is a ribcage." Dresk spat a curse. "The saints' bones," Talisar whispered. "The pilgrims believed they were preserved beneath the altar. They were, just not in the way they thought." We followed the corridor forming in front of us, not carved, but growing open as we approached, as if anticipating our steps. The chaplain's voice echoed somewhere deeper below, or something that now wore his voice. Every step forward felt like being swallowed. The passage descended at an angle too smooth and consistent to be natural. Walls pulsed with a slow, measured rhythm, a circulatory beat. Warmth radiated through the air as though we were nearing a furnace, not of flame, but blood. Talisar paused to set a marker beacon. The beacon was swallowed by the floor, no trace. Helran exhaled. A small sound, but it trembled. "Sergeant, it doesn't want us leaving a trail." I nodded once. "So we remember the way back," I said. But we all knew that memory was unreliable here. The choir's whispers weren't gone, just quiet. And the deeper we moved, the softer our own thoughts seemed against them, as though something else was thinking for us. We emerged into a wider chamber. The floor was soft beneath our boots, not unstable, but pliant, like thick muscle layered under a membrane. The ceiling above arched high, supported by pale monumental ribs converging overhead, like the rafters of a cathedral nave. And there, suspended at the center of the chamber by thick, pulsing cords of muscle, was the heart. It dwarfed tanks, it dwarfed gunships. A colossal organ, slick and glistening, gently contracting in slow rhythm. Every beat sent a tremor through the basilica body surrounding us. It was not shaped like a human heart, more like a sculpted core of tissue, smooth on some surfaces, textured on others, as though sculpted by countless hands merging and reshaping over centuries. Dresk whispered, voice hollow. That was once a man. No, not a man. A weapon, a creation, a god made wrong. The chaplain's voice rose from somewhere unseen, echoing in perfect clarity. There is no death here, only remembrance, only unity, only eternity. We turned, but the chaplain did not stand before us. Something else did. A figure grown into the wall of the chamber. His torso stretched and merged with tendon and muscle. His arms extended into long, branching strands of fibre. His face was visible, calm, eyes open and glowing faintly from within, lit by an internal radiance that was not warp fire, but something slower, something patient. He spoke without lungs. The voice came through the structure. "You fight because you fear disappearing," the chaplain said, or the thing that had once been him. But here, nothing is lost. Every memory preserved, every voice joined, every soul held, no one forgotten, no one alone. Talisar stepped backward. "This is not unity," he said. "This is consumption." The chaplain, the choir, the basilica, replied, "Consumption is merely another form of belonging." The heart pulsed again, slow, deliberate, resonant enough to make my teeth vibrate. Helran choked on a breath, his respirator fogging inside his visor. It's matching our heartbeats," he whispered. "It's syncing with us." "Yes," the choir said, to ease the merging. Then the floor changed. It did not collapse or shift violently. It simply softened. Beneath our boots, the muscle flesh began to draw us downward, slow and gentle, like mud after rainfall. No snapping tendons, no traps, no sudden violence, just the gradual, inevitable pull of a body drawing in its food. "Move!" I shouted. We wrenched free as one, stepping backward, boots tearing loose with wet sounds. Where we had stood moments before, the floor now rippled, adjusting, learning, adapting. It had tested our resistance. We had passed the test. For now, the chaplain's eyes, or whatever used them, stared at me through the wall. "We have been waiting for you, Loran." I froze. It knew my name, not spoken, remembered. I understood then. This thing did not simply feed on flesh. It fed on identity. And if we stayed here long enough, we would not just die. We would be remembered forever, in the worst possible way. We withdrew from the heart chamber, but not far. There were no alternate paths. The basilica's living corridors rearranged themselves behind us, sealing any route upward. The air felt heavier now, not because of heat, but because of presence, as though the structure was thinking, calculating, anticipating. Talisar scanned the walls again. His auspex flickered, then stabilized into clarity, as though the structure wanted us to understand now. "Sergeant," he said, voice low, "I don't think this thing is reacting to us. I think it's studying, learning our patterns, testing how we respond." "Studying us for what?" Dresk asked. Talisar didn't answer, because the answer was already inside the silence. We proceeded deeper into the lower vaults. The chanting still vibrated through the bones of the basilica body, but no longer like a church hymn. It sounded more like a heartbeat recorded and replayed, overlapping, reforming language through rhythm. The corridor opened into an ancient archival vault. Dry parchment, rusted data servitors fused into the walls, scrolls sealed in wax and bone tubes, imperial records predating the founding of this hive. This place had been hidden for centuries. Helran broke open a sealed reliquary tube. Inside, dry pages flaked gently, still readable. Ecclesiarchy sigils, imperial lab designation codes, Crusade-era script, not scripture, documentation, experimentation records. Talisar read aloud, slowly, voice cracking. Specimen designation, Corralis Protocol. Purpose, preservation of imperial manpower. Objective, eliminate natural cell death decay response in wounded subjects. Method, controlled grafting of regenerative biomass. Dresk interrupted, whispering, regenerative, not holy, not divine, medical, military. Talisar continued. Complications. Biomass retains memory of host tissue. Result. Growth responds to cognitive imprint. Subject develops instinct to maintain unity of mass. Subject exhibits emotional resonance. Subject begins to seek additional tissue. Silence. Not shocked silence. Recognizing silence. We were not in a shrine. We were in a failed weapons lab, built over and rewritten into a holy site to cover the shame. The pilgrims above, preserved, fused, sermon still, were not saved. They were repurposed. Dresk exhaled slowly. You can't bury a sin like this forever. Talisar shook his head. They didn't bury it. They fed it. Because faith is the easiest fuel in the galaxy. We found another document sealed beneath record slate. Ink blurred but legible. Request: termination of Project Keralis. Status: denied. Reason: results too strategically valuable. Addendum: reclassify as miracle. Transfer oversight to ecclesiarchy. All scientific documentation to be sealed. That was the truth. Not miracle, not martyr, not saint. Keralis was a regenerative bioweapon that had refused to die. A weapon that had learned to love its victims, to cherish its congregation, to hold them forever. Dresk cursed under his breath, anger rising like heat. That thing isn't holy. It's a hunger that learned to wear a halo. Hellrun swallowed. But the pilgrims, they came willingly. No, I said. The truth hit like a hammer. They came seeking salvation, and it gave them an eternity without death. Talisar stared at the floor. And because there is no death, there is no release. No final prayer. No rest in the Emperor's light. No ending to suffering. Just unceasing unity. Endless self. Forever becoming part of something larger, but never truly gone. The choir began again, but now we understood what we were hearing. It was millions of voices, layered across centuries, not singing grace, screaming so long that the screaming had worn itself into hymns. At first, the choir sounded like prayer. Now, it sounded like memory refusing to die. Dresk backed away from the wall, breathing hard. We're not just fighting a creature, he said. We are standing inside a sin that never ended. Then the heart chamber pulsed again. This time the beat was faster, heavier, awakening, and from the walls, the chaplain's voice, soft, almost loving. Now that you understand, you may choose. Join us, or be forgotten outside us. Every torch lumen flickered, every rib in the chamber shifted. The entire cathedral body leaned closer, waiting for our answer. And I knew then, this was not faith, this was recruitment. There is a moment in battle when the enemy stops being over there and becomes something that sees you, knows you, anticipates you. On Cadia, that moment meant a chaos sorcerer had fixed his gaze. On Varnis 3, it meant the basilica had begun to remember us. The choir's voices shifted tone the moment we rejected its invitation. The song thinned, unraveling into strands of quiet sound that crept along the flesh walls like whispers moving through fog. No longer hymns, no longer worship, names, ours. One voice, my brother's, spoke first. Lauren, you left me. I froze mid-step. His was the one memory I could not armor over. No parade, no oath, no litany for the fallen. I had watched him die, and I had lived. The guilt had no scripture, no absolution. The choir knew. Talisar grabbed my arm before I turned toward the sound. Don't listen to it. But the voice did not fade. It came from everywhere at once. You didn't even bury me. They buried me in a trench, cold, alone. Does the Emperor remember me, Loran? Because I remember you. My breath stuttered. The basilica walls pulsed with slow, deliberate rhythm, the same rhythm as my heartbeat. I realized I had synchronized to the structure without noticing. Every inhalation matched its inhalation. Every pulse lined with its pulse. It was not mimicking us anymore. It was syncing us. Dresk shouted from ahead, his voice sharp with panic. Sergeant, it's projecting images. We ran to him and saw. The wall surface had become translucent, like wet tissue stretched thin. Beneath it, shapes formed from shifting muscle and bone, faces, bodies, expressions. They morphed in and out of recognizability. A child's face, a mother's smile, a lover's profile, a comrade's dying eyes, then our faces, our expressions, our thoughts taking shape before we even fully felt them. Helran backed away, voice breaking. It's not copying us. It's learning us. It's learning how to speak to us, how to break us down, piece by piece. Talisar's auspex beeped erratically. He stared at the readout, then looked up with something beyond fear, understanding. It's storing us, memory patterns, emotional resonance, neural cadence. We don't have to die to become part of it. We only have to remember something clearly enough, and it takes it. Dresk swore and slammed a fist against the wall. The wall shuddered. Not in pain, in acknowledgement. The wall shifted into Dresk's face, eyes full of quiet sorrow. You're tired, aren't you? So tired. Dresk staggered backward. We formed a tight circle, weapons up, breathing too fast, too loud, and the walls, ceiling, floor, all breathed with us. I understood then that resistance was not simply physical here. It was mental. The basilica could not be outrun. It had to be refused. We pressed on into a narrow artery of corridor, walls glistening, steps echoing in slow, muffled tones. The choir did not stop. It simply changed tactic. Now it mirrored our own voices back at us, full sentences, words we had just spoken seconds before, a conversation with ourselves that we did not choose to have. We should have burned this place on entry. We will not survive this. We want to stay. That last one wasn't spoken by any of us, but we all heard it. The basilica was testing desire. Sile's voice, fused now somewhere deeper in the mass, joined in next. It's not frightening once you let go. You don't lose yourself. You join something greater. You won't be alone anymore, Loran. None of us will. Isn't that what we all want? The whisper was warm, kind, familiar, a tone used to soothe children after nightmares. Dresk raised his lasgun, furious, grieving, shaking. Sile died a soldier. You don't get to wear his voice. He fired. The bolt burned into the wall, sizzling through layers of flesh and sinew. There was no scream, only a slow exhale, a breath of disappointment. Then, from somewhere deep below, the heart beat harder. The base of it rattled our bones. Dust fell from the ribbed ceiling. The floor flexed under our feet, not destabilizing, but moving, like a beast stretching in its sleep. The chaplain's voice returned, stronger now, fuller, vibrating directly through the walls. Do not mourn what you are meant to become. Helran whispered, it doesn't just want our bodies. Talisar nodded, tears running down his face without him noticing. It wants our memories, our thoughts, our grief, our stories, our love. It wants the parts of us we hold closest. That's the nourishment. The flesh is just framework. The living corridor ahead opened slowly, not inviting, expecting. The heartbeat quickened. The choir fell silent. Something was waiting for us, something that knew our names, something that had been listening since the moment we entered. We didn't know yet what form it would take, but it would be wearing someone we loved, and it would be smiling. The basilica did not remain contained. We realized it as we climbed back toward the nave, not to escape, but to confirm what we already feared. The structure had been growing, expanding beyond its original walls, its foundations pushing into the hive itself. The corridors we retraced had changed form, now smoother, warmer, more deliberate, like the interior of a living lung. We forced our way through a membrane where the great doors had been. It peeled apart like wet cloth, reforming behind us, sealing the passage without sound. The surface world beyond was no refuge. The city was singing, not all of it, not yet. But the hab blocks nearest the basilica thrummed with the same slow, pulsing hymn. Civilians, thousands, walked in silent procession toward the growing cathedral organism. Their movements were trance-slow, reverent, eyes half-lidded, lips whispering. The flesh remembers the shape of devotion. Dresk grabbed the stone ledge and stared down into the streets below. Emperor, they're going willingly. They were. Old and young, workers, priests, children holding hands with parents, all walking toward the basilica with the same expression Trooper Sile had worn before he stepped into the mass. Relief. Above them, the basilica had changed shape entirely. No longer a cathedral of carved stone. Its spires were now bone, its walls muscle and tendon stretched thin over growth ribs. The stained glass had dissolved into translucent membranes carrying veins of light. It was alive, and it was growing. Talisar activated Vox again. Command, this is Veil Squad. We require immediate quarantine protocols. Basilica is static, but not meaningless static. Whispering, human voices, layered, overlapping, singing. The choir now carried through signal frequencies, not just acoustics, transmission. Helran staggered. It's in the VoxNet. Anyone who listens long enough will... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Faith spreads faster than infection. We watched as PDF forces attempted to hold back the crowds. Non-lethal suppression first, Vox warnings, oaths to the Emperor, then stun batons, then live rounds. None of it mattered. When shot, the converted did not collapse. They softened. Their bodies folded inward like melted wax. Bones dissolved, muscle reknit, flesh flowed like warm clay, and the ground beneath absorbed them. The basilica was already extending subterranean veins beneath the city, turning the very streets into feeding channels. The ground itself had become a digestive system. One of the PDF troopers screamed as a civilian he'd shot began to pull him in, not by force, but by closeness, flesh merging on contact, like two drops of water merging into one pool. Talisar whispered, "It doesn't kill, it combines." Dresk raised his rifle to fire again. "Don't," I ordered. "It won't matter." Down below, the chaplain stood among the crowds, or what remained of him. His body had elongated, robes fused to growing tendon, face serene and glowing from within. He spread his arms like a shepherd greeting his flock. His voice rang out, amplified through the living cathedral. "You have suffered alone long enough. Come, be remembered, be held, be one. No fanatic madness, no ecstatic frenzy, just calm certainty. And the city, the desperate, the weary, the abandoned, answered." People ran toward him, not away, and the basilica pulsed, swollen with new memory. Dresk's voice broke. "We can't stop this with bullets." "No," I said. We were far past that. "We stop it at the heart." Helran swallowed hard. "The charges? We'll need access to the lower sanctum again." "We don't escape this," Talisar said quietly. "If we go back down, we're not coming back up." I looked out at the city, a city I had fought to defend, bled to hold, watched lose sons and brothers and mothers to wars that never ended. A city now begging for a death it would not receive. "We're soldiers," I said. "No one remembers us when we fall. Maybe ending this is enough. No speeches, no oaths, just resolve." We turned back toward the basilica, and the basilica opened for us, not hostile, not welcoming, expectant, as if it had always known we would return. The basilica accepted us without resistance. The living membrane parted the moment we approached, peeling open like the petals of some vast, patient flower, not welcoming, not hungry, ready. The passage inside was quieter now. The hymns were softer, almost tender, no longer a chorus of overwhelming voices, but individual whispers threading through the air. Calm, gentle, intimate. They were not calling to us anymore. They were waiting for us. We descended the same path as before, footsteps muffled by living tissue that yielded slightly underfoot. The air was warmer, thicker, It smelled of incense and old memory. And something else. Tears. Not the scent, the sound. We entered the chamber of the preserved, where the fused bodies had once seemed serene. Now they were awake. Their eyes followed us, not all at once, not in unison, but individually, like they were trying to remember how to move. Their mouths trembled when they saw us, not to pray, to beg. A woman's voice came first, weak, hoarse, as though her throat hadn't formed words in centuries. Please, please, don't leave us like this. Talisar froze mid-step, breath catching in his throat. More voices followed, weak, trembling, layered through the choir. We remember everything. We can't stop thinking. We don't sleep. We don't stop. We don't end. We don't end. We don't end. The chamber pulsed, as though the walls themselves flinched at their words. This was the truth beneath the hymn. No peace, no unity, no salvation, only endless awareness. Dresk took a step back, armor rattling. They're not worshipping, he whispered. They're trapped. A face near his shoulder, half folded into the wall, half exposed, turned its eyes to him. It whispered, "Please kill me." Not a scream, not desperation, just a quiet, exhausted request. Dresk's laser shook in his grip. His shoulders trembled. Then the choir shifted, voices softening, calming, soothing, reassuring, tempting. You don't have to carry this anymore. You don't have to watch your friends die. You don't have to be alone when the war ends. The mound breathed, pulsing once, opening a gentle, warm hollow in its surface. And from that hollow, a shape rose, not monstrous, not grotesque. My brother, or what remained of him. His form was whole. His face was the same as the day I last saw him alive. Not decayed, not aged. His eyes were soft, empty of pain. He spoke my name exactly as he used to. Loran. My knees almost buckled. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, always in battle, always in guilt, always begging forgiveness. But he did not accuse. He did not blame. He smiled. And that was worse than any accusation. "Come with me," he said. "I'm not suffering. None of us are suffering. We're together. You don't have to go back to silence, to grief, to memory." He reached for me. Dress grabbed my shoulder, harder than necessary, anchoring me. "Sergeant, look at him." I did. And for one heartbeat, I wanted nothing more than to step forward, to let go, to rest. But then, something in his eyes flickered. Not warmth, not recognition. Hunger. Not for my body, for my memory of him. He wasn't my brother. He was my grief wearing my brother's face. And grief does not love you. It only asks to stay. I stepped back. My brother's expression did not change. No sadness, no anger. Just the same, soft, endless smile. The chaplain's voice rose from the walls, calm as ever. They want to live. You want to forget. You can all have what you desire. Just surrender the burden of choice. Talisar's voice cracked. They're not alive or dead. They're aware forever. They don't get to rest. That's not salvation. That's torment, made gentle. The choir responded. A slow, resonant hum of denial. But the voices of the trapped beneath it whispered the truth. We are so tired. We are so tired. We are so tired. I raised my weapon. Not at the mass, at the heart of it. Dresk followed. Then Talisar. Then Helran. We had made our choice. Not peace, not unity, not memory, mercy. The basilica pulsed, alarmed now. The chaplain's voice sharpened, distorted. Do not do this. But we had heard the trapped voices. We had seen the price of eternity. We would end it, even if the cost was ourselves. The basilica reacted the moment we raised our weapons. Not with violence, not with rage, not with the thrashing hunger of an unfinished beast, but with pleading. The walls trembled, the choir quivered. The pulsing rhythm of the heart faltered like a gasp. For the first time since entering this place, The thing beneath the basilica sounded afraid. "Wait," it whispered, 1,000 voices layered into one breath. "You do not understand. You are making the wrong choice." Dresk steadied his rifle, though his hands shook hard enough to make the barrel vibrate. "No," he breathed. "We finally understand." The figure wearing my brother's memory, the choir-made imitation, stepped closer. Not attacking, not grabbing, offering. He extended a hand, palm up, gentle, inviting. "Loran," he said, "you don't have to suffer anymore." He spoke the truth, and that was the worst part. Because the war never ends. Not for guardsmen, not for anyone born in service. The Emperor demands everything and gives no promise of peace. "We can rest," the imitation whispered. "We can sleep together. You do not have to be alone. You do not have to remember." The last word hit like a blade. Remember. Memory is where grief lives. Memory is where guilt grows. Memory is where love becomes pain that does not fade. The basilica wasn't offering death. It was offering release. Talisar's voice cracked as he listened. "Emperor, forgive us. It really believes this is mercy." And it did. The basilica remembered every face, every voice, every name of those it took. No one was forgotten here. No one was erased. It was a monument of memory, eternal, endless, unburied, a monument of love twisted into hunger. The chaplain's voice echoed again, rising from the living walls. "The Emperor protects. And what is protection, if not preservation?" His voice shook with fervent, near-tender devotion. "To preserve your flesh, to preserve your voice, to preserve your identity, forever, in communion, in unity, in us." Dresk clenched his jaw. "That's not unity. It's imprisonment." The choir answered instantly. "You imprison yourselves in grief every day. We offer escape." Helran's breathing was ragged, panic and longing warring behind his eyes. "We don't win this war," he whispered. "We just survive it for a while. Then we die, and someone else takes our place. And then they die, and then the next, and we're forgotten just the same." His voice broke. "Maybe this is better." His laser gun lowered 1/2 inch. The basilica felt the shift. It pulsed, gently, like a heart slowing to soothe. The imitation of my brother stepped toward him. "You want peace," it said. It was not mocking. It was not baiting. It was offering. Talisar spoke softly, voice shaking. "Helran, look at his eyes." We did, and for the first time, we saw the truth. The choir did not smile because it was at peace. It smiled because it had forgotten how to cry. The faces were serene because pain had been erased, not healed, removed, cut out, like a memory excised from the mind. Peace like that was not peace at all. It was erasure. I stepped between Helran and the imitation. "No," I said. "We carry our dead because remembering them is the only thing that keeps them real. We carry the pain because it means they mattered." My brother's face changed, just slightly. The smile flickered. A crack in the facade, and beneath the choir's harmony, we heard something else. Screaming, muffled, endless, distant. The truth the basilica hid beneath the hymn. Dresk pressed a hand over his mouth as tears slipped down. "Emperor, they're still in there, all of them." Talisar nodded, voice small. "And they are awake, always." We had no more doubts, no more hesitation. This was not salvation, not mercy, not unity. It was eternity without death, a life sentence with no end, a choir of souls who would never fall silent. We could not leave them like this. We could not join them. We could only end it. My voice felt hollow when I spoke. "We go to the heart." Helran steadied himself. Dresk wiped his tears. Talisar lifted the charge case. The imitation of my brother, the last comfort grief could offer, looked at me one final time. Not angry, not accusing, just sad. Then you choose to be alone. I shook my head. No, I choose for us to be allowed to rest. The choir shuddered. The basilica tightened around us. The heart's beat accelerated, defensive now. The chaplain's voice lost its warmth, sharpening into something cold, primal. If you destroy the heart, you destroy them all. I know, I said. No triumph, no defiance, only sorrow. The chaplain, and the thing that had swallowed him, screamed through the walls. Monster! Maybe I was. Maybe mercy always looks like cruelty from the outside. We continued downward, and for the first time since the basilica began to speak to us, it began to scream. The basilica did not scream all at once. It began as a single ruptured note, stretched thin and trembling, like a voice trying to form words through agony. Then it deepened, layered, expanded, until the entire structure shook with a howling made of thousands of throats that had forgotten how to cry. The hymn was broken. The illusion of serenity was gone. The cathedral of the preserved had awakened into pain. We descended toward the heart chamber again, the walls now rippling with instinctive panic, like muscle recoiling from a blade. The corridor that once guided us now tried to halt our passage, closing in soft folds that sealed behind us, twisting, reshaping, attempting to trap or slow. But we had been inside long enough to understand the rhythm. It was a body, and like all bodies, it was vulnerable where it moved fastest. Keep to the arteries, Talisar said, voice steady now, not afraid, not trembling, just tired. The flow is strongest near the core. We followed the pulse, downward, inward. The choir's voices became chaotic now, fragmented pleas and half-spoken words fighting over one another. Do not stay. Help us. Don't leave. We are still here. You can't. We remember you. Faces formed in the walls as they pulsed past us. People I knew, people I didn't. Children, elders, soldiers, lovers, fighters, the forgotten, the remembered, the lost. The basilica wasn't a monster. It was a graveyard that refused to let go. The heart chamber came into view again. Massive, throbbing, suspended by thick cords of muscle and fused bone. Its surface glistened, veins pulsing with warm, slow rhythm. But now that rhythm was erratic, panicking, straining, fighting, not just for its life, for the lives inside it. Hellran unsealed the charge case. Plasma demolition charges, shaped detonation, armor piercing, enough to breach super heavy tank plating, enough to destroy the heart, enough to end the choir, enough to silence the voices. Talisar moved to plant the first charge at the base of a support tendon, but the basilica knew. The floor surged beneath him, not cracking but grabbing, muscle tightening around his boots, around his legs, dragging him down. Dresk and I lunged, grabbing his shoulders, pulling with everything we had. The flesh stretched like warm tar, elastic, resistant, refusing to let go. The choir screamed, "Don't take us! Don't take us! Don't take us!" They weren't begging for their lives. They were begging not to be forgotten. Talisar met my eyes. His voice was calm. "Let go." "No," I growled, pulling harder, muscles burning. "Loran," he said, gentle now. "I'm already part of it. I've been hearing the choir longer than any of you. I hear them even when they don't speak. I've heard them remembering themselves, remembering deaths, remembering lives, remembering love. I can't leave them like this. I can't leave them alone." His hands pushed ours away. The basilica pulled him downward, slow, not violent, as if welcoming him. He did not scream. He simply whispered, "Make it mean something." And then he was gone. Dresk slammed his fist into the wall, choking back sobs that had no room to form into sound. Hellran shut his visor. Otherwise, he'd have shut his eyes. I planted the first charge myself. The heart shuddered, the entire basilica convulsing around us, ribs flexing like the body of an animal in agony. The chaplain's voice came from everywhere now, his voice no longer gentle sermon or kindly shepherd. It was grief, true, raw, wounded grief. Please, they will be alone. You will be alone. There does not have to be loneliness. I force myself not to answer, because the truth was cruel. Yes, there will be loneliness. There always is. Peace does not come from forgetting the pain of living. Peace comes from being allowed to stop. We moved to the second tendon support. The basilica responded faster this time. Tendrils of sinew whipping from the walls, tearing at armor seals, trying to drag us into the choir. We fired point blank, lasbolt flashes lighting the dark like brief artificial dawn. Helran was hit. The tendril didn't tear him apart. It merged, flesh flowing into flesh. He screamed, not in pain, but in terror. Terror of losing himself. Dresk grabbed a combat blade and cut the merging seam, severing the connection before the basilica could integrate him. Blood sprayed. Helran gasped, but he remained Helran. There was no time to treat the wound. No time to speak. No time to mourn what we were losing piece by piece. Second charge planted. The choir howled like a chorus being drowned. We approached the final anchor point, the one closest to the heart. The heart itself was beating faster now, slamming rhythmically against its supports like it was trying to break free, to escape, to survive. The chaplain's voice dropped to a whisper, not fury, not command, fear. Loran, you could have stayed. You could have been remembered forever. You could have been loved without end. I swallowed. My voice was quiet when I answered. I don't want to be loved by something that can't let me go. I planted the final charge. The heart stopped, just for one beat. The basilica froze. Silence, utter, perfect silence. Then, the chaplain's voice, soft, breaking. May the Emperor remember you then. I triggered the detonators. White plasma light filled the chamber. Heat roared. The choir screamed, not in pain, but in release, and the basilica began to fall. There are no words in any litany for the sound of a cathedral made of flesh collapsing. There is no hymn to describe the noise of thousands of voices being released from endless memory. When the charges detonated, the chamber filled with white plasma, brighter than day, hotter than the breath of a reactor core. It did not simply burn the basilica. It unwrote it, unmade it, broke down its shape and purpose and identity. The walls did not crumble. They melted, folding inward, collapsing under their own mass. The choir screamed once, a single note that contained terror and relief all at once. Then there was silence, real silence, not the charged, watching quiet of the basilica, not the warm, breathing hush of a living chamber, the silence of death, the silence of rest. I do not remember falling. I remember waking. The world above was grey. Smoke hung low over the hive. The sky was a blur of ash and drifting embers. My body ached everywhere, not like wounds, but like something had been pulled out of me, removed, freed. I was lying on rubble, not bone, not flesh, just stone. Stone again. The basilica was gone, not ruined, not damaged, absent. A crater sat where it once stood, a shallow depression of cooled slag, ash, and fragmented marble. Nothing of its previous shape remained. The hive district surrounding it was half collapsed, as though the living structure had been supporting more of the city than anyone understood. I sat up slowly. Dresk was nearby, coughing blood into his respirator. Helran lay on his back, staring up at the sky like he couldn't remember what open air looked like. Talisar was gone. There was no body, just absence. Dresk noticed my gaze. He didn't die for nothing, he said, voice raw. He wanted to stop hearing them. Helran whispered. So did they. We sat in silence for a long while. Emergency klaxons blared distantly, echoing through steel corridors higher in the hive. PDF sirens wailed, voices shouted, but none of it mattered in the crater where the basilica had once breathed. We were alive, and the choir was gone, That should have felt like victory. It didn't. A medical extraction team found us hours later, or maybe minutes or days. Time felt stretched thin, like an old banner frayed to threads. I remember voices. The hiss of auto pens signing casualty reports. The clatter of Medicaid harnesses. Someone calling my rank. Someone calling my name. Then darkness. When I woke again, I was clean. Sterile light, white tile, Medici ward. My armor was gone, my rifle gone, my tags gone. Only a thin hospital sheet and the weight of memory. An inquisitorial seal hung over the door. Interrogation, containment, not rescue. I expected a rosette-bearing inquisitor to stand over me. Instead, it was just a scribe. Thin, pale, eyes like glass. "State your identity," he said. "Sergeant Loran Vale, 132nd Cadian Line." He wrote nothing. "Do you feel any connection to the choir?" "No." "Do you hear any voices?" "No." "Do you feel compelled to return to the site?" I opened my mouth to say no, but the answer caught in my throat because something inside my chest shifted, not painfully, not violently, just moved, a heartbeat, not mine, not separate either. Something remembered me, something survived. I swallowed. "No," I said aloud. The scribe did not look up. He did not need to. His expression didn't change, but his tone did. Softer, almost disappointed. "You are lying," he said. There was no threat in his voice, just certainty. He recorded a notation, then closed the ledger. "You will remain under observation, permanently. Your regiment will be notified of your death in service. You will not be returned to duty." Not punishment, containment. He stood to leave, then paused. "What did it feel like?" he asked. It was the first human question in days. I did not answer at first. I had to choose my words carefully. Every answer mattered now. Finally, I spoke. It felt like never being alone. The scribe's expression flickered, a moment of recognition of something like longing, before disappearing behind procedure again. He left without another word. I was alone again, truly alone, for the first time since entering the basilica. I closed my eyes, and in the silence, very faintly, somewhere deep inside my bones, I heard a single voice, not begging, not singing, not hungry, just saying my name, softly. Loran. And it sounded like someone who didn't want to be forgotten. There is no day or night in inquisitorial quarantine. The lights never dim. The air never changes. Time becomes something remembered rather than experienced. I have been here long enough to stop counting the hours. The medicus say my body is recovering well. They say the burns have healed faster than expected. They say my cell regeneration rate is, statistically, anomalous. They say I require no prosthetics despite the collapse. They say many things, but they never say the only thing that matters. They are not sure what is living inside me. I feel it at night, though night is only what I call the hours when the medici do their rounds more quietly. It starts as warmth behind the sternum, a gentle pulse, like a second heartbeat that has forgotten how to be large. At first, it frightened me. Now I understand it. It is not invading me. It is not trying to grow. It is simply here, a memory of something that loved too hard and too completely. A fragment of the basilica that could not bear to let go. They perform auspex scans every morning. The tech priests frown. They whisper Binharic cant. My results confuse them. There is no foreign tissue in my body, only my own. But my own cells are different. They do not age. They do not decay. They do not die. The Inquisition calls that contamination. The Basilica called it remembrance. I know what they're waiting for. They are waiting to see if I begin to hear the choir again, if I start to pray without realizing it, if I begin to speak with voices that are not mine. They watch every twitch, every sigh, every dream. They fear the return of the Basilica. They should, because the Basilica is not gone. It is remembered. Memory is a living thing. I wake sometimes with the taste of incense on my tongue, with visions of ribbed ceilings and vaulted bone halls, with the feeling of hands, gentle hands, resting on my shoulders, not holding me, just reminding me. The choir does not speak in full hymns anymore. No overwhelming resonance, no recursive chanting, just a single, small voice. A voice I know, a voice I tried to destroy. My brother. He does not plead, does not lure, does not mourn. He simply asks one question. Do you remember me? Yes, of course I do. Memory is the wound that heals last. The Inquisition brought a confessor to my cell yesterday. Old, tired man. Eyes like someone who has buried more soldiers than he has baptized. He asked me to describe what I saw, what I felt. I told him the truth. Nothing in that place wanted to harm us. He flinched. So you still believe it was a miracle? No, I said. It was love. And love can be monstrous. He had no litany for that. No scripture answers the question of love that refuses to let you die. Today, they brought me a mirror. I don't know why. Maybe to test my reaction. Maybe to see if I'd recognize myself. I did, mostly. My eyes are the same shape. My scars are my scars. My hands are still calloused in the same places rifle grips wear down skin. But my expression is different. There is no grief in it, no weight. Just a quiet softness, like someone who has already forgiven themselves. That is the scariest part. Not the heartbeat under my heartbeat. Not the memory that hums in my bones. Not the faint warmth under the ribs that never fades. The scariest part is the peace. They think they are containing me. They are not. They are preserving me, just like the basilica did. I sleep now. Not much, but when I do, I return to the cathedral made of flesh, not as a prisoner, not as prey, as someone being waited for. The choir is not screaming anymore. The choir is patient, and patience is eternity. One day these walls will not hold me. One day, someone will open the door without wearing gloves. One day, I will step outside, not to spread anything, not to build anything, but simply to remember. Because memory is contagious, because comfort is contagious, because loneliness is unbearable. I do not know if I will let the choir return. I do not know if I will be strong enough to resist, or if resisting would even be right. But I know this. The flesh remembers the shape of devotion. And when I close my eyes, the basilica is still breathing, somewhere, waiting, for me, and for all of us who cannot bear to be forgotten.